welcome to another episode of the Black Narrative. This is your host, BlackIce, and for tonight's show, we're going to talk about the black faces of the white agenda. Um, Basically, you can watch the interview between Candace Owens, you know who she is, obviously a black conservative, and she did an interview with Marc Lamont Hill, which is a writer, Temple University professor, and he used to work at CNN, and he's pretty liberal. So I knew this was going to be a great interview because he has somebody who was a far left and far right coming together. And as far as me, if you don't know what my views are, I don't like either party. I just like a good discussion. So I'm not coming into this show as pro Candace or pro Marc at all, but I just want to tackle a couple of the topics they were talking about and just give my commentary on how I feel about it. And I mean, the interview was about an hour and a half long, but we're only going to go through, I just want to cover the parts where they're talking about George Floyd, and I want to talk about the parts where they talk about the trans community, because they both have opposing views on both, and I think we could kind of listen through. And I know Candace Owens' reputation in the black community is not the best, so I know a lot of people wouldn't catch this interview. So, but I just want us to watch it with open mind because she said some things that I agree with and what I disagree with, and we're gonna go through both. And like I say, I think this will lead to a great discussion. So, we're gonna watch it. We're gonna go through it, and just let me know your input if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and and like I said, leave a comment, share the video with others, and we'll check it out. The interesting interview with Candace Owens and Marc Lamont Hill.
Candace Owens show, and one that I am very excited to bring to the forefront of the discussion. I always make the comment that there is not enough discussion between black conservatives and black liberals. For whatever reason, I invite so many black liberals on to my show, and despite their willingness to tweet at me, to tweet about me, to write articles about me, they never take me up on that offer, which always leads me to the question, do they actually believe what they believe? You see, I'll go into any room and defend my positions because I actually think what I say that I believe is true. I'm very excited that one person I instantly messaged on Twitter and he said, yes, let's do it. Come on, I'll come right on the show.
I would give her props for that because she entered the Lions Den when she went to an event down in Atlanta with the Diddy event. When we had T.I. and Killer Mike on the panel. So I give props for that.
Marc Lamont Hill. Marc Lamont is a professor, a tenured professor at Temple University. He teaches media studies. Marc Lamont Hill, welcome to the Candace Owens Show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited.
This is going to be
hear.
interesting.
It is. And I think it's good because people need to realize you can have a discussion with somebody that disagrees with you.
Yeah.
And I actually, one person I forgot to mention that disagrees with me, but we have so much love between each other, is Killer Mike. I think he's one of the greatest leaders in the black community. We are.
That's just a topic for a different episode. I don't know who made Killer Mike a leader in the black community. I know who, man. That's just the liberal agenda at play again because I know I discussed this before when I guess a few weeks ago or I guess about a month ago now, and when we had those riots down in Atlanta, and Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms did a press conference, and T.I. and Killer Mike was there, and I've been watching it like, why are you there, and why they continue to get any black entertainers to represent the black community, and there's a lot of young people out here in the streets, and I don't know any of them saying, yo, we look up to Killer Mike and T.I. But that's a topic for a different story. But I do think he's a great guy. I think he's a great artist. I think he has some good views on some things, but to put him on that pedestal of the leader of the black community, no, I'm not giving him that.
We are totally on different pages. He was pro Bernie and I'm pro Trump.
And that's exactly why I don't care for Killer Mike on that end, because I'm not pro Bernie at all. I know why he is, and I actually talked to him about it before. we had some discussions about it before, actually on Twitter like years ago about it because like I think he supported Bernie for like two different terms now, and my main thing was Bernie was very quick to vote for reparations for his own people. Mind you, that America had nothing to do with the Holocaust at all. But when it came to reparations for Black people, he's like, nah, I don't believe that. So that alone, I was surprised Killer Mike still backed him up after that. But at the same time, not. But you know how it goes. But anyway, let's continue.
But he cares and he knows that I care, and we read a lot of the same books and we have slight disagreements, but ones that are, I think, important to talk about publicly. So let's get right into, obviously, the hot topic of today, which was the killing of George Floyd, the protests that have ensued all across the country because of that, and my comments, which seem to have shocked the world, about me not believing that he was deserving of this martyr status, meaning 4 funerals. I think now we're actually at 5 funerals publicly, a golden casket, the vice president showing up at his funeral, or I think eventually he decided to just do a video, the former vice president, Joe Biden, and celebrities there. And I thought that that actually sent not a great message publicly to the Black community.
I saw your comments.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, why did you say that?
What did you think about my comments?
In fact, I was watching them this morning again. I thought they were off base. I think you pointed out some things that may be factually true, but are beside the point. So to say, for example, that George Floyd had a criminal past, true.
Before you even get to that, I disagree with her views about George Floyd, but I kind of agree about her view about having the multiple funerals. I thought, he did have that I can count. I think it was 4 funerals in different cities, and the golden casket, and because yes, he was murdered by police, and yes, we should be upset about it. I didn't like the way the politicians they allowed I guess the family, I want to say, I can't believe how the family allowed these politicians to come in and infiltrate that, and they use, and not just politicians, the Black Lives Matter movement as well. They're guilty of it as well. I'm mad that they allowed them to come through and capitalize on his death. Like, why are you allowing Joe Biden to speak at this man's funeral? Why are you allowing Al Sharpton? When I saw Al Sharpton at a funeral, I knew it was infiltrated from the get go. Like, stop allowing these people using using the death of a loved one to capitalize, to pursue their own agenda. I did not agree with that at all.
Right. I don't know whether there's drugs in the system or not. I want to see a little more evidence. But let's say for a moment that the autopsy reports that we say are correct.
Both of them, the private one and
private and public so far, right?
Yeah.
I don't see an argument for why that should make any difference. Now, you conceded that what the police officer did was wrong, which I appreciated, because if we don't start there, then it's not a good faith argument, right? Then it's like, what are we talking about? The problem is those things can be used as a distraction from the point that you did touch on, which is that this was wrong and that state violence is wrong, no matter who it's against. And to me, whether he was on drugs, whether he robbed 10 stores, is irrelevant to this particular conversation.
Yeah, no, I think so. For me, I think it's actually very relevant, and not to, I wasn't saying that to overshadow the conversation. I actually didn't think that the conversation was being overshadowed, because it was actually the first time that there was a full consensus, left and right, that this police officer was wrong. There was nobody disputing it. I mean, even in the Trayvon Martin situation, you had left and right, different opinions, different beliefs of what actually took place. This one, it was just rock solid across the board. Everybody agreed, including the police station. I mean, the chief of police came out and said that it was completely wrong, who was a Black chief of police in Minneapolis. The fastest process ever to investigate it and to get him arrested. So, I mean, in terms of justice.
That's a false narrative. I mean, yeah, they say it was wrong, but main thing, a lot of people didn't say it was murder, for one. That's the key word. I mean, George Floyd was murdered. And another thing, it took for people to light up the city for those officers. Well, this would have one officer arrested. It took for them to damn near burn down the city for that to happen. So she's totally off base on that.
This being served, it was immediate. So what I didn't understand, was why we had the responsive protests. when justice was served, right? You're usually
And justice still not served. I mean, until these cops are arrested and convicted, justice is not served. So again, she's off base.
protesting because you've been aggrieved or there's been a wrong and you're looking for something to be corrected. This was not that circumstance. And then on top of that, there was a glorification happening of him where people were actually saying that he was a hero. We had little kids wearing t-shirts calling him, George Floyd hero in these marches. I was looking at these t-shirts and that's wrong. I can't get behind that. If your point is that you're defending Black lives, this whole platform is supposed to be about Black lives. George Floyd spent his entire life harassing Black people and destroying Black lives. So I just don't see how it can be.
That's the Black faces of the white agenda. It would be really easy to expose how Candace is a Black face for the white agenda, because that's a white agenda argument. They go to immediately, like, if Black lives matter, what about Black on Black crime? But we already know where they're going with that.
Both.
That's fair. It's I would disagree with that. So the first point is the justice wasn't done yet, right? One officer. At the time of the protest, one officer was arrested. There were 3 who stood there with their hands in their pockets, doing nothing, watching him die. They were complicit, and they were fired, right? But they weren't arrested.
So you felt they should have been arrested immediately? They were rookies, so I was trying to be a little sensitive to the fact, and I still don't know how I feel about that. Like, they were rookies. It was their 3rd or 2nd day on the job. This guy was a senior, had a senior position. He's been here for years.
Yeah.
They were probably 2nd or 3rd day on the job, you're looking at this guy and you're going, this must.
It's amazing how she's sympathetic to the rookies that was there, that witnessed the murder. And to me, they took part by doing nothing to stop it. But when it comes down to George Floyd, you want to question his whole past. Like, come on now. Blackface, white agenda.
Must be the right thing to do,
But if everyone in America could see that this was the wrong thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, bipartisan agreement that this is not what we're supposed to do. Again, there is a herd mentality. There's a gang mentality that often occurs, even with police, sometimes especially with police, where you see something awful happen and nobody wants to be that person to say, hey, stop. But that's the job.
Especially a rookie, though.
But I can't let him off the hook for
Even
that.
if I was my first day at Starbucks and I saw a manager stuffing cash into his pocket, my first or 2nd day, I'm not going to be the person to raise that issue because you're just going, I don't know if this is supposed to be going on, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And again, I'm not
that's
saying,
a bad example because
no,
that's not doing harm. What if you saw on the first day the manager spitting in someone's coffee? You wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm a rookie. Maybe that's how we do things."
You
here.
could imagine as that's happening live that somebody might just be looking around versus if I've been there for a few years, I'm going to be like, "What the heck did you just?"
To me, the whole Starbucks thing is a horrible example. Listening to this, the example that comes to mind to me is the trials with the Nazi officers after World War II, and there was an argument that a lot of Nazi officers were using, saying, hey, they was doing their job, or they threatened, the Nazi regime threatened them if they didn't do their job, killing off the Jewish people at these concentration camps. But they still got convicted because, you still have your free will. You could have took that chance, I guess. But, you just weren't left off the hook because of, you're just doing your job type of thing.
Do because you're not comfortable in a job in your first couple days. Everybody's a new person. So I was much more sympathetic to the ones that were standing by. I'm not defending them, but I'm saying I tried to be a little more understanding. Derek Chauvin, you look at and you're like, this guy has been working on his police force forever.
Right.
He's the one doing all this stuff. They just looked like uncomfortable idiots. And that's what I think they were.
Right. But that's why I'm going to the point of people didn't feel like justice. It wasn't like, we got our justice, but let's tear shit up anyway. Can I curse?
Yeah.
People were like, we just tear shit up anyway. People wanted accountability from these 4 officers and they didn't get it. And so, and whether we think it was fast or slow is not really the point. I'm just saying I would dispute the idea that justice was solved and we kept going anyway. The other point here that you raised, which is an interesting one, is about actually, let me say one more thing about the first point. The other thing here was these protests weren't just about George Floyd. They were about a sea of issues, and this was like the culmination point, which often happens in history, and we can talk about that. The other thing, though, I think about raising him to the level of hero. First of all, I think whenever someone is eulogized, right, and these were national public eulogies, we don't say, yeah, but, right? When we eulogize Reagan, right, as a nation, there were many people who chided Black folk, and people on the left for criticizing policy. Say, wait, there's a time for that. But why are we criticizing him now in a time of mourning? Why are we doing this here? Why are we doing this now? So yeah, I don't think at George Floyd's funeral we should be raising his criminal history. But again, I don't see how that's relevant to the issue here. No one was saying that he was a champion of black people his entire life. The point was, regardless of who he is, his life mattered. His life was worthy of protection. And in some ways, I am actually interested to think about what it means for us to fight for someone who wasn't perfect. Because very often we only fight for the middle class, cisgendered, straight, heterosexual guy who's going to college on Monday like Mike Brown, and we have to put Trayvon on a horse to say that he didn't need to die. And it's like, that's not the point. You shouldn't have to be perfect to
I
live.
think it is the point, because, and this is my problem with our community, is that Black Americans are hypocrites. We are hypocrites, right? So you say, oh, well, it's not the point. Well, where were we on the issues of kids getting shot, actual innocent Black victims being killed?
See, and Mark was making a very good point. You shouldn't have to be perfect to justify if a person should be able to live or not. I mean, we are human beings, and and like either way, he was murdered. It doesn't matter what he was doing in his past. How many times he went to jail in the past, he was still murdered by police. And you see, as you can see, she deflecting again. Talk about the black on black crime. Black on black crime get prosecuted. It's just the crime of white officers against, unarmed black people that doesn't get prosecuted. And that's the issue. But you see how she's just taking the narrative and running with it.
Every weekend, every day in the inner cities, nobody cares. If you want to give somebody a funeral and you want to have it be 5 days long, why not do that for Tyshawn Lee, the 9-year-old kid who was wearing his school uniform and playing basketball when he was lured
She playing right into the white agenda right here.
Into an alley by, an older Black man who then shot him point blank in the head 2 times because he didn't like his dad. And it was like, it was gang violence. Nobody cared. So this whole idea of there's this uprising because you care about Black lives. Don't pretend you care about Black lives. You like the political expediency of caring about a Black life, if and only when they die at the hands of a police officer, or die at the hands rather of a white person, because it doesn't even have to be a police officer, as long as it's a white person. But we kill ourselves faster and nobody cares. So can you name the last 10 Black people that died of homicide in this country? Because it wasn't George Floyd.
Of course not. But
why not?
So because there is let me go to the first point you made. Tyshawn Lee, of course, that's something we should be sad about, and I think Black folk are. I've never met a Black person who didn't care about Black on.
That was his mistake right here. Now you let her take control of this narrative, and you should have just brought it right back to George Floyd. And about everyone else, and every other crime is about the murder of George Floyd done by the police officer.
Black
Where the
violence.
protests.
We can talk about the protests of that. Let me finish this other point, though. I think when you get to Tyshawn Lee, the point is we mourn him, right? My issue with you with George Floyd was, imagine if we mourn Tyshawn Lee, we go to his funeral, and then you bring up the fact that he was a schoolyard bully, hypothetically, right? It'd be like, well, yeah, okay, maybe he was a schoolyard bully, but that's not relevant to this thing we're talking about right now. I'm okay with you talking about violence within the community. The question is, do we want to bring it up here, and what political work does it do to criticize him in that space?
I think it's especially important to bring it up there. And I'm not talking about being a schoolyard bully, because that's totally different. That almost sounds petty. But when you're talking about somebody who ran drugs to the Black community, a huge issue that Black Americans always talk about, oh, the reason there's so much addiction, is because of drugs. The reason that there's drugs, and people point to the idea that, the CIA ran crack into the Black communities. But
I mean, is that not true?
Then when you want to talk about why we have this issue of drugs, we want to martyr somebody who went to prison 5 times for selling drugs. Armed robbery, you want to talk about violence. I mean, we're talking about a man. This is not a guy who just was bullying people. I mean,
that doesn't matter. He was still murdered by police.
Force your way into a woman's home and put a pistol to her stomach and threaten to kill her as you rob her while she's pregnant. Okay, this guy was a terrorist, in my opinion. I think we are literally martyring somebody who terrorized the Black community his entire life. I'm not comfortable with it. Now, if he had done a 180 at the end of his life, I believe in forgiveness. I'm not above, believing that people make mistakes, but this was not the story of George Floyd, and that is proven by the fact that he was on the most addictive drug that is in America today, which is fentanyl. Fentanyl is 100 times stronger.
But how does that make him a bad person?
How does it make him a bad person? I'm saying the idea, I'm attacking the narrative but then after his 9th stint in prison, which is, by the way, if you want to talk about a record, going to prison 9 times is very difficult to do, before you turn 40 years old, and he did it, okay? And then people wanted to say, then he moved to Minneapolis, changed his life around. I have a problem with the lie. I don't like a lie. He didn't change his life around. He was still doing drugs, he was still pushing drugs, and he was high on fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Doesn't matter. You're still murdered by police.
Time of his arrest, which, by the way, fentanyl, literally, quite literally, is what doctors give to patients when they want to bring down their breathing. And my problem is we can never have an honest discussion. There are so many black victims in the world, true victims of homicide who have done nothing wrong. Maybe they were high school bullies.
But he was a true victim of homicide.
No, I'm saying when I say,
Right.
yeah, he was a true victim of a homicide.
Uh-huh,
Who knows at the end of the day, because right now there's dispute.
See, whether he was on drugs or not, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that dude's knee was in his neck.
In the medical examiner reports, some are saying that he actually died from fentanyl. His breathing was complicated by whatever. Then they got a private person. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to dispute the manner of his
She's complete trash for that.
death. But I am going to agree that what Derek Chauvin did was an example of police brutality, regardless of whether or not is exactly what led to his death. I just don't think it's on.
Notice that one time she said that was a murder. I haven't heard her say that yet.
It's not okay to me to elevate somebody who traumatized black people their entire lives. He was a bad man, and is it relevant? Yeah. When you're putting him on t-shirts and you have little kids wearing posters and crying, yeah, that should not be your person that you're looking up to. I wouldn't tell my kids to put on a George Floyd t-shirt.
Yeah, I don't think the world is looking up to George Floyd. I think they're looking to his death as an example of what's happening to us every single day in societies. And I think that's
But it's not happening to us every single day in society.
Oh, it absolutely is.
What is?
Excessive force, police brutality?
Your police are killing black Americans every day?
No, brutality, excessive force. I'm not talking about death. Brutality, right? That's the point, right? George Floyd was beaten. People are beaten every day. George Floyd was attacked.
Some people are beaten because they are being violent to police officers.
So if you look at the data suggests something different.
What does that suggest?
The data suggests that even when you control for the nature of the offense that they're charged for, meaning obviously there's a greater chance that you'll have a physical interaction with a violent offender than say someone who passes off a counterfeit bill or someone who steals a loaf of bread, and you control for all the other data, all the other factors which would mitigate against the argument I'm making or challenge the argument I'm making. Blacks and Latinos are 40 to 50% are 40 to 50% more likely to face excessive force. Now, when you get to death, when you get to police shootings, the most accurate and recent data from the studies that are out don't suggest a racial disparity, right? Black people aren't necessarily more likely to be killed by law enforcement every day, on a day-to-day basis. In fact, the numbers are relatively low. But excessive force, absolutely, the data is indisputable. The black
whose statistics?
I mean, you could study
because I've looked at statistics and I've never seen this, and I'm talking about people that have
Sometimes you can't get so deep into the numbers. The numbers can be screwed to fit any agenda or any narrative, But police brutality is real, and most of us, especially black men, probably had some type of bad encounter with police at some point in life.
Actually been proven to be using excessive force. There's been no racial disparity, and if there is one, white males are more likely.
No, they're more likely to be. You're looking at the death.
Not just killed, excessive brutality. I'm not talking about filings, because you might be talking about filing.
And see, and that's another thing too. It'll be hard to get numbers about police brutality because, I mean, how often would it even be reported, and who do you report it to? I mean, because it's done by the authorities. So that we come to a topic like this, you can't compare numbers. Numbers is not the right way to go about it.
No, I'm talking about even when you look at I'll give you an example. Roland Fryer has a study in 2019, the Journal of Political Economy, that's been reviewed, peer reviewed, etc. And he actually pushes back against more stronger arguments on my side, which I'm not invoking because I would say I think Roland's study is actually more accurate and less in my favor. But the data that they're submitting, ironically, is from police departments.
Right.
So we could intuitively believe that the most racist police departments aren't submitting the data. So these are the police departments saying, hey, we're doing this right. We're willing to show you this stuff. And 40 to 50% of that, 40 to 50% higher rate among black and brown people of excessive force, being thrown to the ground, also being handcuffed without arrest. But why are they
so just to introduce that data and say they're being thrown to the ground means nothing unless you say what the reasons were for them being thrown to the ground. Do you get what I'm saying? So that data is very subjective.
Well, and can't forget that George Floyd was handcuffed and on the ground. Like, he was no longer a threat at all. I mean, he's on the ground and handcuffed with hands behind his back. So it was absolutely no reason to have a knee to his neck for over 8 minutes, no matter how you slice it.
Now, if you're saying like, they threw him to the ground because he was running and they had to throw him to the ground, and you saw a police report where they've studied and it says this person was thrown to the ground and he was black, okay, well, the answer could also be that you look at the statistics of who's more likely to fight back against police officers, and the answer is black people. So data can always be manipulated to give you the answer you want to hear, which is why I think the most concrete evidence.
That's why I want you to look at the study, though, because they actually addressed the point you're raising, and they said that's not true. I think the most important, concrete data to look at, and I'm glad you've already acknowledged it, is that there is no racial disparities when you look at the numbers of who's actually dying at the hands of police officers. So the entire narrative that's out there right now in the world is just patently wrong. I'm talking about deaths now. White Americans are 25% more likely to be killed by police officers. If you're talking about death.
Let's see, you got to get the whole story. I mean, you got to think about it. Black people are the minority of this country. Is that meaning more white people? So yes, the number of people dying at the hand, the number of white people dying at the hand of police will be higher. Just our population alone. Absolutely.
Deaths, police officers are 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black man than the other way around. Why aren't police, honestly, a protest by police officers against black men would make more sense. It wouldn't. It should be 18.5 times louder.
No, it wouldn't. And this goes to the question you asked about why we're not protesting black on black crime. Prisons are filled with black people for killing black.
See, he shouldn't even be entertaining that question at all. That was one. Well, he looking real goofy right now. Yeah, but oh, that face look goofy. But yeah, he shouldn't entertain that at all. Now you playing into her hand.
Black people. Prisons are filled with black people.
No, how many of them are not caught?
No, I'm not saying everyone who does it is caught. My point is that black people have a good faith expectation that we'll go to jail for doing crime, right? It's not like there's no narrative that black people don't go to jail for stuff, right? The problem is with law enforcement, when it's the other way around, when law enforcement does crime against us or does the daily ritual of excessive force against us, we now don't have a good faith belief that they will be arrested, that they'll be fired, that they'll be arrested, that they'll be tried. And if they are tried, we have no belief that they'll be found guilty, even if the evidence is overwhelming. And so what we're protesting against is a system that is supposed to be honest and fair, but isn't and doesn't yield just outcomes. So part of why when somebody in my neighborhood, gets shot and then that guy gets carried out in handcuffs, we're not protesting, not because we're not outraged by it, but protesting doesn't actually stop person A from killing person B, right? The protest is to stop at the level of the neighborhood. But when it comes to police, the idea is that we're protesting a system that's supposed to protect us, and they have the highest responsibility.
Yeah, but I mean,
police.
Again, looking at the data, and again, I'm talking about death because excessive force. As soon as you use the word excessive, because it's an adjective, it lets you know that it's subjective, right? Excessive is like saying tall or short.
No, it's not. Subjective. It's not. No, that's not subjective. They've operationalized it, so it's specifically use of violence when not use of violence beyond what's necessary to detain a suspect, or use of violence that's unprompted, right? So they've operationalized this. And again, they're basing this also on the response of the officers, right? They're basing it even on officer reports. That's why I strongly encourage you to read the study.
I mean, I will, again, because I'm flying in the dark here, because you're telling me about a study that I haven't actually read, and I definitely have studied this. And as I said, perhaps they have operationalized it and there's a way to determine what's considered excessive force. I don't know that, and perhaps you're right, I don't have that study in front of me, but what we do know is that people that are protesting out today are not protesting because they believe that police officers are using excessive force.
Oh, they are, though.
The whole mainstream narrative, when they're having people on and talk on CNN and Black Lives Matter, their entire platform is about black men dying unarmed at the hands of police officers. It was founded upon that concept. So I hate the fact that we're now shifting and pretending it's about something else, and we're widening the net, and we're making it about excessive force studies that nobody is talking about on CNN. Everybody is talking specifically about the idea that a black man that is unarmed is likely to die at the hands of a police officer, and that's fraudulent. It's a lie.
So, Black Lives Matter actually wasn't founded on that. It was founded on Trayvon Martin's death, which had nothing to do with law enforcement. George Zimmerman wasn't a law enforcement officer. So from the beginning, we're talking about the kind of sense of unsafety, unprotectedness that black people experience, not just from law enforcement, but really around in every sector of our lives. Black people, not just men, but women and anyone else. That's the first thing. And I think Black Lives Matter has always talked about the daily violence, among other things. If you look at the Movement for Black Lives policy statement, they're talking about all kinds of stuff. It's always been
it's actually most about LGBT movement now.
It's wide net, but it's.
There you go. Now, she was right. She's right about that. If you go to the Black Lives Matter website, it's basically a low-key gay organization.
It's an interesting.
But that's the problem. You create a wide net when you're full of bullshit. Right? When you know you're bullshitting. It's like we're about trans rights and police. I mean, it's like maybe one sentence now that's even about police anything. They've really kind of dwindled it. And it's actually more about, equality, for trans something.
But this is.
She's not lying. If you go to the website, you go through their mission statements and the bios, like that. Basically, that's what it's about. Like you won't find anything about unarmed black men getting gunned down, at the hands of police. So yeah, so on that end, she is completely right about it, and Marc has no idea.
But Candace, I would think this would be up your alley,
what?
Right? Not the trans part.
Definitely not up my alley.
But the idea that we're not singling out the police. We're saying that we should care about black lives in all sectors. I mean, that's part of the argument you're making about black on black violence is one about saying we should care about black life, not just when it's threatened by police, but everywhere. The movement for Black Lives is saying, look, we care about poverty. We care about certainly state violence. We care about food insecurity. We care about all of these things because they connect.
But they're lying. That's the whole point. You can put that statement on your website, but then when your solution to that is to go into streets and to riot and to burn down and to loot, and every time they have a protest, it ends this way. So it's not like there was like
That's
that.
Not true.
It's not like there was that one time where they started every time Black Lives Matter narrative starts running in the media, black people die, black people's neighborhoods get burned down. From the start of Trayvon Martin, moving on to Freddie Gray, and here we are today with George Floyd, with Ahmaud Arbery. This is what happens every single time. So if there was if there was that one time, there may have been other protests that were. I'm not condemning all protesters. I believe in protesting.
I'm pushing back against the every time narrative.
No. Okay. What I'm saying is every time their narrative, like when I say becomes mainstreamed, every time their narrative, every time you go, whoop, we're doing Black Lives Matter again. You can bet your ass all across the nation, black neighborhoods are going to burn out. People are going to lose their.
Another false narrative, and as a exact same narrative that when we had the riots down here in Atlanta, and when Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms did her press conference, she was saying the same thing, and brought Killer Mike and T.I. up there saying we burn to go home and stop burning out our own neighborhoods, and it wasn't our neighborhoods that was getting burned down at all. That was nowhere near the black neighborhood. But anyway,
their jobs and black people are going to lose their lives, right? So that's the hypocrisy. The idea that they care about all this other stuff, when in fact every time they're protesting, it is specifically about police brutality, okay? And black people suffer. So if your solution is worse than the problem, it's not a solution.
So
how many black people have died in these George Floyd protests?
So that's
how many black people have been arrested because of these George Floyd protests? How many black people have been impoverished because of these George Floyd protests? That's when it's a good time to sit back and say, is what I'm doing working?
Okay, so let's look at that. So I think it's an interesting way to frame this. Black Lives Matter protests happen every day, and they've happened since 2014. Your point is that the media when it becomes the national narrative becomes this is a BLM moment. Shit is on fire. What I'm asking you to consider is that part of what happens is when shit is on fire, they throw BLM onto it, right? That they don't account for all these other. I mean, I go to BLM protests all the time where people are marching, and we're not just marching against police violence. Again, that's just the sexy story. Cable news doesn't actually care about black food insecurity or trans. I mean, one of the most vulnerable populations are black trans women in terms of being subject to death. Again,
so that's because the majority of what's the reason that they have a higher death rate?
I mean, there are a few reasons. There are structural factors, but we can talk about that too. But my point is, we don't cover it. So part of it is that part of it is not that black people don't care about this stuff. It's what's sexy to corporate media. Sexy to corporate media is black people burning shit down.
Right.
So
that's fair. I would totally give you that. That is usually when it's the media.
One for us, guys.
No, I mean, look, I have said that 90% of our problem is the media, but at that point though, if your movement is being hijacked. And that's how it's being portrayed.
Candace is on it again. Yes, the whole movement has been hijacked. That was going on all the summer. Yeah.
How do you combat that?
Well, I think you have to decide if you care what the dominant media narrative is, and also what political work does that media narrative do? Because I don't also want to pretend that the rebellions that we've been seeing around the country aren't significant and aren't valuable. I just don't think they can be the only game in town, right? If you
think the rebellions are good,
yeah, oh yeah,
these autonomous cities, the burning and looting of black community, and
there she go again. Talk about burn down black communities,
the black communities' homes and burning down of the neighborhoods. These black people that are crying on screen saying that their neighborhoods are being destroyed. You see that as a good?
No, what I'm saying is that I see a movement of uprisings around the country as good. Now we can discuss tactically whether each specific act is wise.
Tell me how it's good. Let's take Minneapolis, the first one, when they burned down the city. Tell me how you looked at that and said, this is good.
So one thing is that, again, Black death is so ordinary in this country, right?
Yeah, because we do it the whole time to ourselves.
And Black death is so ordinary in this country. regardless of how we sort of we can analyze why in a moment, but getting the nation to stop and pay attention often requires the spectacle of violence, right? I'm not talking about killing people. I'm not talking about doing harm to people. I'm talking about even like tearing up a store, right? If you look at Martin Luther King, just as one example, right? Martin Luther King leveraged the spectacle of violence to get America to pay attention. The only difference is Martin King said, we're going to strategize so that we get beat, right? We're not going to tear other people up, but we're getting beat, right? I mean, the Pettus Bridge was the idea of being on Pettus Bridge was, that if we protest here, that they will that these police will come and harm us.
Yeah,
and that America
really
will see how brutal.
strategy because it showed America that the problem.
That one hurt me a little bit because that was not a brilliant strategy, and you really think about it, that was kind of horrible. I mean, this way Marc phrased it. I mean, he phrased it correctly. I mean, but it's like Dr. King was in the meeting, like, yo, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna do this protest. And we're going to let these people beat our ass. And, the whole world going to see how bad these white people really are. As if they didn't already know how bad they are. I think that was a horrible strategy. And I would say that was brilliant considering we living in the year 2020 and we haven't seen hardly any change at all.
Problem was the police. Do you think the spectacle right now is showing America that the problem is the police?
Yes!
The problem is no, it's not. When you look at these riots, it is not. This is the exact opposite of Martin Luther King's strategy.
And you look at a lot of these riots too. It's been mostly white people do these things. I mean, even in Atlanta, when I first saw the riots in Atlanta, that happened on a Friday night, and as soon as I went on YouTube to watch the news live, the first thing I saw was a white person waving a huge Black Lives Matter flag, and another white person burning American flag in front of the CNN Center. So not only it wasn't done in the black neighborhood, it was done downtown, which is not black owned, and it was done by white people, well, done by us.
Exact opposite. Martin Luther King said, we're going to go in and be peaceful, and we're going to watch them send dogs on us. They're going to set their fire hose on us. And when the whole world sees these clips, they're going to realize that the problem are white people that are racist and the governments that are allowing this terror to go on. Okay? Win. He crushed that. It was a brilliant strategy. Right now, Black America's strategy is we're going to go in and be violent. We're going to go in and loot. We're going to go in and take the TVs. And then
hey, we're going to go in and be violent. I mean, how often do we see the protesters being violent? Usually it was the authorities attacking the protesters. People pretty much marching peacefully for the most part.
America's going to think, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist unit, and that's exactly what the concept is. It is.
But I guess what I'm pushing back against is
we don't look good. This is not making Black people look good.
The first thing I'd push back against is this idea that the only time we can engage in the type of resistance is if our bodies are the ransom for justice.
I'm just telling you, it's not Martin Luther King's strategy.
No, I'm with you. I'm agreeing that it's not. I'm saying it's not the same tactic. The overall strategy is still to use violence and the spectacle of violence to get justice. Right. But you're like, and what I'm hearing you say is that's cool if the dogs are biting us and the hoses are spraying us.
I'm saying you're not, the message you're going to deliver is that Black people are violent. So using the idea, and you have just already said that you thought Martin Luther King had a good strategy, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
What we are doing is the exact opposite of that strategy. So we are showing that Black people are violent, that Black people loot, that Black people rob, that Black people kill one another. That is what is being shown. How you think we're winning with that narrative, I don't know. I don't know who right now is thinking, I'm so glad we took those TVs at a Target and burned down Target because now people are seeing.
That's such a small part of what happened. The other
about that Target, about the Target that got burned down after the death of George Floyd. And I think to my knowledge, when the protesters were getting pepper sprayed and tear gassed, that Target refused to sell milk to the protesters. And to my knowledge, that's why they went back and tore the thing down because of that. So, and that if that is the case, I had no sympathy for that Target.
The thing is, even
what was the spectacle that was shown?
No, I'll tell you. But when we talk about King, right? Because there's King in marching in '65, but there's also what's happening in Watts in '65, what's happening in Detroit in '67. There are the same rebellions you're talking about are happening around.
And
King.
what happened? What was the conclusion of that?
Hear my thought out though. My point is that it's never a single strategy, right? There's always multiple things happening, right? There are people calling for defunding right now, and there are people on the streets. Just like King, there are people who are marching and getting beaten by police, and there are people who are tearing up Detroit and Watts. I'm saying we need multiple strategies. Now, I agree with you. I would love I would love if, and I got to say, I have a bookstore in Philadelphia, and a whole bunch of stores on my block got smashed. Sneaker store got raided. What else got raided? Another a hair store got raided. My bookstore did not. Right? My coffee shop did not. Now, why? Well, it's not nearly as random as you might think. Right? Much of the people, a lot of the stuff is, oh, you're tearing down your own shit. Most of this shit in our neighborhood isn't ours. Right? Most of it are people who are occupying our neighborhoods. Most of the stuff we're taking, most of these homes that are burning, we don't own.
So Target, where they hire majority black people, so you've taken black people's jobs in that situation. I mean, I'm trying to see one positive thing in burning down.
Come on now. Come on. Yeah, that Target also the ones that underpaying and overworking black people. So, they're not acting like Target is doing good for the people, because they're not, and like, to Marc's credit, like, we don't own a lot of these things that are getting torn down. Like you say, the Atlanta riots, and I mentioned the Atlanta riots because I live in Atlanta, so I can tell you, because that's from what I've seen. When the Atlanta riots went down, it started downtown at the CNN Center, across from the basketball arena. We don't own any of that, so it getting torn down. Like, yeah, we wasn't affected by that. And then a lot of jobs in the area, it's mostly black employees that are vastly underpaid and overworked. So I didn't feel bad at all. And then later on that weekend, they went up to Buckhead, it's an affluent area of Atlanta, North Atlanta, and they broke in and did some damage up there too. But again, we didn't own anything in there. So, her pushing this narrative that black people destroy their own neighborhoods, that's all false. That's a false narrative. When the Atlanta mayor went on TV, did a live press conference with T.I. and Killer Mike, talk about we need to go home and start destroying our own neighborhoods. They weren't doing that. And I should put up the footage from that, because that was just totally ignorant. But yeah, and then you can tell that Killer Mike and T.I. didn't even want to be there. On top of that, I mean, they're pawns. So, but anyway, so I was showing you the first half here about the George Floyd part. Just showing you how Candace Owens is a blackface for the white agenda. And most of us already knew that. That's pretty much already a given. I mean, so she's conservative and to me anti-black. So that's very obvious. But now we're going to cut towards the last end of the interview when we know Candace is conservative, not pro-black, and I think oftentimes, and we know she's a pro-Trump supporter, and I always say I think black people give Trump too much credit for how America is today, because America always been racist. I mean, it's always been this bad. You were just in denial when President Obama was in office. I mean, it's not a Trump problem; it's an American problem. I think saying it's a Trump problem is a liberal narrative, because they trying to do anything possible to get Trump out of office and get a Democrat in office like Joe Biden. But even if Donald Trump loses and Joe Biden in office, this would still continue. Nothing would change, because Joe Biden is a white supremacist, just as Donald Trump is. So, and that's what I'm saying, man. And I just wanted to watch this because I'm very objective about this. So, like I said, I didn't go in this being pro Candace or pro Marc. I'm gonna show you what I agree with from both of them and what I disagree from both of them. But I think they both, at the end of the day, they both pawns for the white agenda. So anyway, we're gonna skip over to the part where they talk about the LGBT issues, and you're going to see Marc's. You want to see how Marc is a blackface for a white agenda. So we're going to check this out.
I just want to move quickly because I know we're running out of time, and I want to ask you specifically about the.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
How did you feel about the Dave Chappelle thing?
Like what Dave Chappelle said about me?
846, yeah.
I have a thing.
You didn't tweet about it, and you tweet a lot, so I was genuinely.
I did tweet about it.
Oh, I guess when I woke up, I hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, I tweeted immediately about it. I said, I'm not going to be offended by this because I'm a big believer that we need comedians. I think right now we've arrived very suddenly into a politically correct environment where comedians get canceled. They're said that now everything they say is too vulgar, too sexist, too racist, too this and that. And the comedians are there to further the conversation, and they should be offensive to everybody, every side, all the time. And I've seen Dave Chappelle be offensive to conservatives. I've seen him be offensive to liberals. And that space, to me, should be sacred. And so I said, I'd love to meet him. I've been a fan of him my whole life. But I
don't know if y'all watched that special. Dave Chappelle did a special called 846. It was a 30-minute special. It's on Netflix, YouTube, and it wasn't funny at all, to be honest. So it was on the Netflix comedy part of YouTube, but he was saying some real thoughts, and he went in. He really spoke the truth about some things, and gave his viewpoints, and one thing that Dave Chappelle said too, I thought was great. He was saying we didn't make George Floyd a hero. Y'all did. I mean, y'all the one that killed him. We didn't choose George Floyd. He was, y'all killed him. Y'all put them in this position where people wearing T-shirts and everything about him. Yeah, but towards the end of that special, he went in on Candace Owens and said some very vulgar words towards her, and I'm glad she took it on the chin. And I respect what she said about the comedian space should be sacred, and she's right. I mean, be so PC everything now, to the point you can't tell the truth about anything by getting canceled. So I'm glad that she's saying that, because I think he would say something like that about anybody else or to another conservative. I don't think they would have took it on the chin the same way she did. So I get props for that.
I will defend comedians to the death of me to say what they want. They need to. Their ground is becoming less and less sacred, and they're being canceled too often.
That wasn't a gotcha. I just genuinely wanted to ask you. I really wanted to know.
Everyone thought I was going to be upset, but I'm like, do you know my brand? I'm not politically correct, And,
I think Laura Ingraham might be upset, but
I don't know. I haven't seen her or talked to her about it, And I know there were some black men who felt like, this is too vulgar. We can't be talking like that. But this has always been his brand. So if he had switched it up and suddenly became vulgar, then I would be like, this was, just hateful. But I've seen all of his stuff. He's always taken risks. He's always, really gone in and said stuff like that. So I personally believe comedians are in a sacred space and they shouldn't be attacked. Especially in today when we're in cancel culture all the time. We need more comedians to just take risks and say stuff. But I wanted to ask you, as a last topic about the LGBTQRSTUVWXYNZ agenda.
The agenda? That sounds so nefarious.
It is agenda. It is agenda. When you start, trying to get policies placed into school that allows teachers to call your child by a different gender, and as a parent, they're not required to tell you. They could be calling your little boy Samantha all day at school, and they don't have to tell you. That's an agenda, right? When you start trying to systemize it, and to make it systemic, it becomes an agenda. And when you see how vicious that lobby has become, particularly the trans, I've said, you had me at the LGB, lost me at the T.
Why the T?
The T, because that's when you started telling people they were bigots because they don't want to play the crazy game. So here's my point. I think trans is a mental disorder. I think there's tons, gender dysphoria is a mental disorder. There's tons of mental disorders out there. There are people that walk around down the street and think they are Superman. Think they have powers and they can fly and they're Batman. And I would never want to see that person attacked. I grew up in a family where one of my uncles had severe mental disorders and thought he was Indian from a tribe or something, kind of got it because he was in solitary confinement for too long and he actually went crazy in prison. So I've always been sensitive to people that have mental disorders. But when you start saying in society that you now have to pretend that Candace's uncle is an Indian, and if you don't, acknowledge him as Pocahontas, then you're a bigot, that's wrong. Now you're putting the pressure on me to not just be, accepting of this, but now to play the crazy game and to say, if you mispronounce and you don't call him Chief Pocahontas, then you're a bigot. Yeah. I don't play that game. I'm going to live in reality. You cannot live in reality. You can say how you feel. You can say what you think you see. You can say that you think that, we're on Mars right now, but I'm not going to pretend that I see Mars because it makes you more comfortable.
So I would, obviously I disagree.
I agree with Candace on this
and what's interesting is there are people, you say you're with the L and the G and the B. There are people who, 30 years ago would have made the exact same arguments against you for the L, the G, and the B. They would have said that there's scientific data, that these are people who have mental disorders. There's some misalignment between what they desire and what they're supposed to. That there's some kind of gender thing going on that they're confused about. And and you know, I think that we have to do a few things. For me, I think the easy part, and this is the part I think you and I agree on, is that we have to accept, and we should accept people as they present themselves in the world, right? Like if someone says my pronouns are, if I told you my pronouns were she, her, you would address me as she and her, right?
No, I wouldn't.
Really?
No, I would call you Mark.
Okay, but you wouldn't call me he.
No, because I mean, I would call you Mark, you know, if that was something that made you comfortable. But if I saw you,
and if I said my name was Jane, would you then call me Jane?
If that was your legal name, yes.
But you'd only call me by my legal name.
Yeah, I call you by your legal name. I don't have an issue with that. But I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to change what, you know, these established pronouns for male and female because you say, you know, I'm Mark and here I am presenting.
So what do you? So I really want to ask you. I'm genuinely curious about this. But first, let me just say, I think that one, this isn't a case of someone thinking there's something that they're not. What people are saying is that there is a misalignment between my sex and my gender.
Disorder.
No.
That's the point. My mind and my body don't match. That's a disorder.
That doesn't make it disorder. It just means that the world may be more diverse than we've previously understood it to be, whether we see it in plants, whether we see it in animals. There's all kinds of complexity. And we look in history. I mean, even we go back to the continent of Africa, we look in Asia. There's all kinds of examples of people who have complicated gender performances and complicated understandings of gender, and how we perform gender can be different. But I guess my question for you would be, why, if someone identifies as, particularly in a, someone who you engage with, say it's a colleague at work or whomever, a family member, whomever, if they say, look, I prefer to be called she and her, and I no longer want to be identified by this name, why not just honor that?
If you changed your name, I will honor it.
But why not? I mean, I'm sure you call people by nicknames and all. I'm sure you grew up in a black neighborhood, right? People, I know you know somebody named Peanut, right?
Yeah.
Right. You don't say, well, that's not your legal name. Your mama named Joe. I'm gonna call you Joe.
No, I'm saying if a name is one thing, but if you're asking me to change pronouns, I'm not going to do that because these are established pronouns. You're asking me to now change the English language, right? We know why we call female she, her, girl, woman. Okay, these are words that have meanings. These are words that have meaning. So this is a book. Right? So could you call this is a book and this is a mug? Could you call this a book and call this a mug? Yes, you could do that if you want to change it, but words have meanings, right? So now if I switch it and you say, well, this mug wants to be called a book, it's a mug. It's just a mug. This is the word we've established for mugs. This is the word we've established.
Yo, love it or hate her, she's absolutely right. I totally agree with her on this.
For books. So you're asking me to change the actual meaning of words to accommodate you. I'm not going to do that.
No,
I'm not going to do that. It is because not only is it a request, you can now get in trouble in certain states.
I'm saying that's not
for misgendering someone.
The request of the trans community is not that I'm actually a man, but I want you to pretend I'm a woman. The argument of the trans community, which I agree with, is no, I am a woman, and so I want you to revert.
Yo, he is goofy as how he look right now in this screenshot.
But you're not a woman, so that's the problem. So this is what I say is now you've asked me to take on your mental disorder, right? So I am okay with the fact the argument from my uncle who thinks he's a Native American from a certain tribe is that this is what he thinks, but he's not. Okay, so I'm not, then to say to me that argument is valid because he thinks it, no. Just because you think something doesn't make it real, okay?
But that's exactly what gender is. Gender is exactly about an experience and a performance and a social construct.
It's not a social construct. Stop saying a social construct. To say that words don't have meaning and they're socially constructed means nothing, and I'll tell you why.
Well, they are.
But you say that, but then
This wasn't always a book.
Okay.
This is the part where, this when Candace really about to eat this dude up.
Could be called mug.
So then you know what it is? Our entire discussion about Black America meant nothing. There's no such thing as racial injustice. You see what I did there? Because black is a social construct.
Yeah, but we live in a social reality. So within that social reality...
It can't be both, Mark. So you either think that the gender wage gap is BS, that feminism is wrong, and that racial disparities are all BS because everything's a social construct. You're either going to go full postmodernist and say nothing is real and it's all made up, or you're going to acknowledge that there are some hard, concrete truths. If there are hard, concrete truths, you and I are black, okay? That's not going to change because we wake up and we decide, you know what, today I'm white and it's just how I feel, and today I'm Chinese. No. You and I are black, okay? We are acknowledged as black people. We're sitting down as black people. I am a woman. You are a man, okay? Now, if I want to wake up tomorrow and say I'm a man, you want to say you're a woman and we want to play the crazy game, we can do that. To then say all of society now is to pretend that it was all a social, no, it was a social contract. You were born a male. I was born a female.
Yes, that's a sex.
We are black. Okay, it's a color though. Black is it's a word that we use to say a sex. Female is a word that we use that has a meaning. It means you are born with a vagina. You can have children. You have a uterus. When you are a male, you are born with a penis. You get a woman pregnant. These words have real meanings. We cannot suddenly get into society where there are no truths.
So to acknowledge a social construct does not mean that we ignore biology, and it doesn't mean that we don't have.
Can men get pregnant?
Depends.
Look at this dude's face, bro. Look at him. He said that with a straight face. She straight up asked him, can a man get pregnant? And this dude said, it depends.
I know.
She had a look on her face like, did he just say that?
What does it depend on?
I know trans men that
right then, she can't take this man seriously at all.
get pregnant.
That means it's a woman. Only one sex can get pregnant.
That's a circular argument. That's
it's not a circular argument.
Yeah.
It's proving my thing. There is a truth, a concrete truth. You have to be born with a uterus to have a baby. Only women can get pregnant.
How off can you be to make Candace look good at this moment? You know, like you look real clownish saying something like that, man. That is crazy.
Pregnant. The fact that we've arrived in a society
Right, and that's the part I'm disagreeing with. That's the part I'm disagreeing
There's
with.
nothing to disagree with it. These are facts. So you can say that this person who is pregnant identifies as a man. That person was born a woman. I can tell you that every single time because only women can have sex because there are concrete truths about life.
Have babies.
Can have babies, pardon. And that is a hard truth about life. You cannot make that go away because you want to call a man, somebody who has a beard and dresses like a dude a woman. Only if it's pregnant, I can tell you exactly what it is. It's a woman.
So I'll give you, let's go back to the social construct thing because it'll answer the thing you just said. I'm not ignoring what you just said. I want to tie it together. So
look at now. Watch his body language here. He's nervous. Like that. Look at him. Rolling up the sleeves now.
The idea of my point was that a social construct doesn't ignore physical realities, right? The social construct is about how we as a society make sense of those physical realities, right? So, for example, you said we're black, sure, right? I'm trying to think of you pick a light-skinned black person, right? They're black, right? We'd agree on that. Mm-hmm. Now let's go to the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the PR. Let's go to Puerto Rico. Let's go to Jordan. Let's go to Iraq. Let's go to Sudan. Let's go to Ghana, right? And let's go to South Africa. I'm picking these places very specifically because they have different racial logics and racial paradigms. And what it means to be black here, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a universal blackness, right? That in Dominican, there might be 5 different other racial categories, right? And there are some light-skinned black folk here who, when they go to Ghana, get basically seen as white, right? Because of how we socially construct it. Doesn't mean my biology changed. Doesn't mean my physical reality.
Bruh talking in circles right now. He making no sense at all.
Reality change, but how society engages this stuff is what makes it a social construct. So similarly, when it comes so I'm not ignoring the realities of race. So with race and racism in America, and then I'm gonna take it back to the gender thing. When it comes to race and racism,
He's trying so hard. He's struggling.
In America, it's yes, biologically we're all the same. Right? Black people, white people, there's an infinitesimal difference between a black person and a white person in terms of our genetics, right? This is superficial stuff. But that's a biological reality, right? It's a biological fact, right? Just like as biologically true as me being born with a penis, right? But the truth is, but the idea that there's social meanings attached to that blackness that make people fear me or that make people think that that person's life is worth more because they're white or whatever. Those are social meanings that are arbitrary and different. So to acknowledge social constructs doesn't mean you ignore biological realities.
But you just did that when you said that men could give birth.
So similarly, what I'm saying is that I'm not denying the biological reality of maleness, of the genitalia we're assigned at birth and what we can do with those body parts. I'm not denying that. That's a biological reality. Again, the social meaning I'm attaching to it is what I'm saying is more complicated.
But it's not complicated. Can men give birth?
Sometimes.
This is a professor at Temple University. Hey, if anybody go to that university, or anybody in his class, you may want to consider going to a different school.
That's my answer. Yes.
And the answer that is crazy. And this is we cannot. It's just crazy. We cannot allow this to happen.
But you wouldn't say the definition of being a woman is the ability to give birth.
And I'm not saying it, but only women can give birth is a factually true statement. Only women can give birth. there's only one type of human being
Only
that
people
can
with
give birth.
uteruses and vaginas
Yes,
and
can
stuff
give
can
birth.
give birth.
Only women can birth.
I'm
Men
not
cannot
disagreeing
give
with that.
birth.
I'm not, and that here's what I think we're talking past each other. What I'm saying is, I'm not disputing the fact that certain body parts yield certain kinds of possibilities, right? What I'm disagreeing with is the idea that that is the measure of whether or not you're a man or a woman in society.
Okay, but it is now come to a point where if you say that only women can give birth, you are called a bigot. That is crazy. That's nuts. If you say, like J.K. Rowling did when she got canceled by the Harry Potter cast, that only women can menstruate. Okay, can men get their period? Can you help my
Watch this.
audience? Can men get their period?
Some can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Buddy said that with straight face that some men can get a period.
Trans men, there's some trans men who can. And again, I think it's okay to ask interesting questions. I think it's okay to have intellectual debates. But I don't think that we ever want to enter a space where we deny the humanity, and I'm not saying you are, but to deny the humanity or the experiences of other people.
Like I said, I was totally okay with trans until it became a demand. What you are denying is my ability to be an intelligent human being, right? You're denying my ability to talk about science and biology in a meaningful way. You are now making your existence is actually infringing on mine. Okay.
How so?
And because when you make it a requirement now that I have to pretend that men can give birth and men can menstruate and there needs to be tampons as the ACLU is fighting for in male restrooms, and that if I don't see the reason, the importance of that, then I'm a bigot. I'm someone that doesn't accept. No. I accept you if you want to run around and you want to wear a dress and you want to call yourself Tiffany and you want to put a pillow in. But you won't call me Tiffany. If you want, I don't need to know your name. It doesn't mean anything to me. If you want to call, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't believe your name is Tiffany. You know, if a person comes up to me and they're in a dress and a skirt and they say my name's Tiffany, okay, cool, Tiffany, cool, right? But when it becomes Candace is a bigot because she won't acknowledge that, you know, Tiffany the man got her period and can have a baby, I'm not playing that game. I will never. So
tomorrow,
back
I'll come
down.
on your show tomorrow, and I have decided that, or a year from now, suddenly I have reimagined my identity, and I have.
He said he reimagined his identity. That you just proved a point by saying that.
I have recognized and affirmed my identity as a trans woman, and I no longer want to identify as Marc. I want to identify, as use your example, as Tiffany. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be like, this book says Marc, you're Marc. You'd call me Tiffany.
I'd call you Tiffany, but I'm not going to call you she and her because that has real meaning, and I'm not going to play the game.
What's compromised by that is what I'm trying to understand.
My reality. You're now saying you've transformed your reality, and now I have to pretend that words have no meanings, and they do have meanings, right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to call you, hi, Tiff. How you doing, Tiff? Did you have a good day, Tiff? Great, Tiff. I'm not going to then say she. I'm not doing that. And if people cannot, if people the demand,
but you won't misgender me either.
What?
Oh my gosh, I hate that word.
Just call you Tiffany.
And if they say where Tiffany go, you're not gonna be like he just left. You'll say she just left.
I'll probably slip up once or twice. But
I'm not talking about
Tiffany
mistakes, but I'm saying you wouldn't intentionally misgender me.
No, I wouldn't intentionally misgender you, but I don't want Tiffany in my bathroom. I don't want Tiffany in my spaces.
But you also don't want tampons in the other bathroom. Right? That's what I don't get.
No, I don't care. I think it's stupid. I think it's foolish. I think it's dumb. But if that's really where guys want to go, do it. I don't care. It's not my business. It doesn't impact me. I don't have to go in the bathroom. But I don't want Tiffany in my bathroom.
And you okay? Are you okay with gender neutral bathrooms?
That's how most bathrooms are. That's all. Go on the plane. They're all gender neutral.
No, I got you. But I'm saying
bathroom, fine.
But
cool.
I'm saying designating a specific one, like in public spaces, like restaurants.
Yeah, I hate that they say gender neutral because usually they just say bathroom. Like you don't need to say gender neutral. It just says bathroom, and we all understood that. That just seems to be an extra step of virtue signaling to say gender neutral. You just put bathroom. Everyone knows what that means.
No, but a lot of times in places, like for example, in our university, we have.
Oh man. Yo. Yeah, that's all I just wanted to show, man. But they just show, like you say, the two black faces of the white agenda. You have Candace on the far right that play into the whole white agenda. You know how you see how her views were about George Floyd, and and basically she played the white argument of when somebody mentioned police brutality, their first rebuttal is, well, what about black on black crime? Like, she played right into the white agenda and a lot of her views that she does. And at the same time, you have Marc, who's on the far left. He also plays into the white agenda. Like, you get this black man on here, college professor, saying to Candace with a straight face that some men can get pregnant and have a period. Like, and so I want y'all to know that that the white agenda is on both sides. I mean, I don't want y'all to think, oh, the white agenda is everything that is pro Trump, and it is not. It goes both ways because they both shiesty. They the right and the left. No, right wing, left wing, same bird. That's how the saying goes, and both sides are bad for black people, as we just see here. Like, this was hilarious. What we just watched was the first half, and then we watched the last part of the interview. In the middle there, it was kind of boring to me, but they go into the education part of things, and the Marc did hold his own a little bit better there because I mean he is a college professor, and when it comes to stuff about like college education, he knows what he's talking about. I mean, that's what he does, so I give him credit. I don't think he's not an intelligent man. It just he just also a part of the white agenda. Where I think the biggest thing is Candace knows she is, and I don't think Marc does. I think he just bought into this whole very liberal mindset for whatever reason, and I don't think Marc was always like that, but he is now. And to straight up say with a straight face, just saying that a man can get pregnant and a man can have a period, man, that just makes us look very bad, and this show you, um, it just show how far gone this country is, man. To the point that that's even at a conversation. You having a conversation about this, that just show how bad it is. But on the same note, just to have Candace straight up denying white supremacy, and and she not acknowledging there is a problem with police brutality amongst black people, not just black men, black women too. You have situations like Sandra Bland and others. Um, that's going on out there, you know. But yeah, I really wanted to show y'all this because I know a lot of you. I know some people, some of the viewers I know that watch this channel, they would not watch the Candace Owens show because of her far right views, and which I do not blame you. I'm just petty, so I enjoy watching far left, far right get into it, and but I just want to show y'all that it's not just one sided; it's from both sides, and both sides are not for you. And I don't play into the whole lesser of two evils thing. That's a white narrative given to us. I mean, and what other part of life are you living your life by? The lesser of two evils outside of politics. Like, that just sounds dumb. Evil is evil. We shouldn't be dealing with it at all. And then, as we just see here, evil is on both sides. You have the conservative side that don't acknowledge black lives, and then you have the far left side, that Marc was on. There's also is not pro black. They trying to kill us off as well, and they making us the face of this trans community, and get rid of black men and whatnot. So. But I thank you for watching. Once again, my name is BlackIce. Please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If what y'all thought about this, especially if you haven't heard about this, because this podcast just happened. This episode just happened just a few days ago, so it's still fairly new. But I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts. Do you think Candace was completely wrong on everything? Do you think she's right on some things? And same as Marc Hill as well. So. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next time. Shalom.